Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome co-founder and CEO of Web Summit, Paddy Cosgrave.
Wow, holy cow, this is a lot of people. You're all incredibly welcome to Web Summit. Welcome from hundreds of cities and countries from all across the world to our host city and host country, Lisbon, Portugal. Most importantly, perhaps, welcome to the world's largest gathering of entrepreneurs. What a city and what a country. If this is your first time in Portugal, let me tell you, this won't be your last. Portugal is a very special place that we've fallen in love with, and we're proud to say is going to be our home for the next 10 years. Thousands of people are working behind the scenes to make Web Summit happen for you. From the police, to the fire brigade, to the taxi drivers, to the venue staff, the list is endless. It also includes our young volunteers, who are students, if you happen to meet them, from more than 60 countries all over the world. And I'd like to ask you to put your hands together for all those working to make Web Summit happen for you. I'd also, of course, like to welcome some very special people: the Secretary General of the United Nations, the Prime Minister of Portugal, the Mayor of Lisbon. I should also welcome my wife, Faye, and our little growing family to Lisbon. You're very welcome, and thanks for tolerating me. Finally, I'd also like to ask you to give a huge cheer for the more than 31,000 female entrepreneurs and engineers who've joined us from literally every city in the world. So, Web Summit is the world's largest gathering of entrepreneurs. And sitting all around you are incredible, incredible people. Yes, Web Summit is about hearing from brilliant people speak to you, but it's also very much about all of you. It's about you meeting each other. It's about you connecting with those around you. So many of you can help transform the careers, the companies, the cities, and even the countries of the people that are gathered here today. 10 years ago, Web Summit didn't even exist. But today, as you look all around you, just remember that nowhere on earth do more entrepreneurs gather every year, and those driving entrepreneurial companies, universities, cities, countries, and more gather. Many of the most incredible people here will not be on this stage or any other of our stages. There's simply too many of you here to accommodate all of you. Instead, sitting all around you are exceptional, exceptional people. In many cases, you are that person. And the next 4 days are all about you connecting to like-minded people just like you. And I think that's really important to remember. And so in a moment, in what has become an annual Web Summit tradition, I'm going to ask everyone to stand up and introduce yourself to at least 3 people around you. You really, honestly, just never know who happens to be sitting beside you. And it's a truly magical moment. Are we ready? Okay, let's all stand up and start introducing ourselves. Hey. Where are you from?
Portugal.
Portugal.
Yeah, I heard about it.
Nations Antonio Guterres.
Greece.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Where are you from?
Croatia.
Croatia. Hi, guys. Now, there's going to be lots more time for this evening. Isn't this fantastic? So when you're done introducing yourself, grab a seat. Okay. I can't stop you guys. This is unbelievable. Let's start sitting down. Here we go. So this evening, immediately after this, we're putting together Night Summit just around the corner. This is incredible. Let's all sit down. Let's all sit down. If you could, down towards the back, just sit down. That would be fantastic. Brilliant. Brilliant. So I've met some people from Greece, from Croatia. Is there anybody here from the Ukraine? Wow. Is there anybody here from Germany? Is there anybody here from Brazil? They're always the noisiest, no matter where you go in the world. So, it's been an incredible year. So much has happened. The speed of change, both good and bad, seems to be accelerating still faster. Technology is turning upside down everything we thought was certain about work, society, politics, and life itself on our little planet. On center stage tonight and over the coming days, entrepreneurs, world leaders, scientists, and more will talk about the promise of technology. More than 1,000 speakers will also take you on deeper dives across more than 20 industry-specific stages right across this huge Web Summit campus stretching more than 1 kilometer. Every morning, we'll kick things off on center stage at Web Summit at 9 a.m. with something a little new. A dozen of the most interesting startups, the most interesting early stage startups in the world, curated by the world's leading investors, will be presenting on stage for the first time. The first of those amazing dozen startups will be on stage tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. But tonight, we're joined by some very special guests indeed to open Web Summit. A little later, we'll be joined by Portugal's current Prime Minister, Antonio Costa, along with the Secretary General of the United Nations and the Mayor of Lisbon, Fernando Medina. We'll also have the man whose vision brought Black Swan and the wrestler to the big screen. And from the big screen to the small screen in all of our pockets, Apple's Lisa Jackson. But before all of that, before we talk about the ways our lives have been collectively transformed by the web at Web Summit, let's watch this video about the creator of the web itself.
Who invented the World Wide Web?
Should know this.
Is his name Steve? No.
Bill Gates.
Al Gore.
Siri?
I can Google it for you.
He designed the web. He wrote a paper that said, here's what the World Wide Web should look like.
The ultimate vehicle for free expression.
There are thousands of people who are probably more famous than Tim Berners-Lee, and yet not one of them has had the impact of Tim Berners-Lee.
I'm very happy that I'm not a household name. I think that must be horrible.
Please give a huge standing ovation for the creator of the web, Sir Tim Berners-Lee.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Web Summit. Thank you, Lisbon. It's great to be back in Lisbon and awesome to be at the Web Summit. So I'm going to bring you, next few minutes, I'm going to bring you to a certain extent some celebration. It's been almost 30 years since I started this web thing. And I'm going to bring you some concerns. And I'm going to ask your help as well. So the arc of this talk is going to be starting off with the inception. Well, you know, for most of you, I probably have to go back and explain that the web and the internet are different, because when in 1989, when I was figuring out the World Wide Web, proposing it, writing a memo about it, the internet had already been around for 20 years. So Vint Cerf and co., they invented the internet back in 1969. Okay, very, very different. For 20 years, the internet had spread amazingly across the world, mainly across America, had to be said. And then, so in 1999, picture me at CERN. I wrote a memo. The memo was about an idea. My boss didn't really have the right to give me a huge global hypertext project on the budget of a physics lab, even though it was a big and really crazy and interesting physics lab. So what he did was allow me to do it as a side project. The neat thing that he allowed me to do, in fact, the excuse, he said, you know, we could use it. You always wanted to buy that next machine, the next computer that Steve Jobs has just designed after leaving Apple. That was the coolest machine around. So why don't we get a couple in? You said you wanted to check out the development environment. So, you know, Objective-C and the neat kernel and optical drives and stuff. And so he said, that can be your excuse for developing the web. You can do it to test the development environment. So that's what happened. I got a Next, fired up the interface builder. If you're developing on iPhone now, the interface builder may be pretty similar to the one that originally came from NextStep that I used back in 1989. It was an amazing machine. It was amazing software. And even though it probably ran about 100, the clock speed on that big computer probably was 1/100th of the clock speed on your phone, but great machine. and so I wrote the first web server. I wrote the first web client, the first browser. It was called worldwideweb.app. For a while, I had explained that in the next world.app meant something was application, and now it's on. Everybody's talking about apps. So back in those days, if I had to pick one thing about the design, which I think was the most crucial for everybody to preserve, one thing about the design which led to the web taking off in such a way, and that is, it would be the universality. Really important to make the web just a platform, no attitude. It should be independent of what you should not have attitudes to what you should use it for. You should be able to use it for any sort of information. You should use it for in any culture, any language. You should be able to use it with any hardware and any software, any operating system. And so universal in lots of ways. That universality of the web has been key, and it allowed it to take off. And I have to say, when talking about this arc of the web, initially, for the first 15 years, it has been a time when most people just expected the web to do great things. They thought, they'll be good and bad, that is humanity. But if you connect humanity with technology, then surely, great things will happen. Yes, great things happen. We got Wikipedia. We got the Khan Academy, we got blogs, we got a feeling of, we got cats. Don't know, where did those come from? But the general feeling was that humanity connected to technology has got to be more communicative, it's got to be more peaceful, more constructive than a humanity disconnected. So why am I talking to you now? Well, you know, if you don't have to talk to each other here, you can go out into the street and you will find that the people, this is the growth curve, by the way, on that computer you saw, the next machine, that was the first web server. This is the number of hits per day as we go through the first 3 years. It's on a log scale. So every year, the log on the first web server was 10 times what it was that day the previous year. So that's a serious exponential growth. It grew by 1,000 times as many hits. Although we didn't have concepts like clicks and hits back in those days. So there was serious growth. And that optimism, people saw the growth, people assumed that it must lead to better humanity altogether, because after all, if you connect people together, keep the web free and open, which was a battle sometimes with net neutrality and things like that, but we could keep it free and open, and then people would do good things. What could go wrong? So now, looking back, you can what could go wrong? Well, all kinds of things have gone wrong since. We have fake news. We have problems with privacy. We have problems with abuse of personal data. We have people being profiled in a way that they can be manipulated by clever ads. We can have those ads being taken them to sites where they come across fake communities of fake people who have fake ideas and spread fake truth. So, yeah, there are lots of issues with the web. So why am I talking to you about this now? Why at this particular point should I talk to you about these things? Well, it turns out that we are almost at the point where half the world will be online. I say almost because actually when we planned to do this, or I planned to come to Web Service and give this talk, we were going to be celebrating the fact that already more than 50% of the people were online, and we're going to talk about what that meant. So there is this graph. Well, this graph it ends with predictions. This is the ITU figures about how many people are online, how many people actually can use the web. And when you look at the top, actually, if you'd drawn that sort of freehand, you'd expect it to go up a little bit more than it is. It seems to droop at the end. And in fact, most of the predictions we had a few years ago were that it would keep going on. In fact, this is actual rate. The blue line is the rate of people joining, getting online. It is dropping off. Whoops. All right. That's an issue because everything we do in this community to make the web more and more powerful, actually, it means that we increase the digital divide. Every time we make the web more cool, everything you add to the web, it means that the difference between people like us that are online and people like the other, almost 50%, more than 50% of the world who are not online gets greater. And so, in fact, we have an obligation to look after both parts of the world. So I'm going to give you, and we have two things we need to do. We need to make sure that for the people who are connected to the world, to the web, that the web actually is a web that allows them to produce, it's the web they want, it's the web that allows them to produce the world they want, and fix a lot of the huge number of issues we have with the existing web. And also we need to help at the same time. We have an obligation to help the others get online. So that's just two things. You can do two things, right? So fix one half of the world and fix the other half of the world. So and after that you can. But how are we going to do that? Okay, so we have this idea the Web Foundation, and the Web Foundation is what we call a contract for the web. Why contract? Why not a manifesto? Why not all kinds of things? Well, so a contract, here's the thing about a contract. Contract is about different parties coming together from different angles and playing different roles in the contract, meet the contract, things happen, they produce positive mood, positive change, and they all get rewarded. So the thing about the contract for the web is that we've got various principles which we feel, the values, 9 values that we think are important behind it. But then we're going to look at how, if you're a government agency, how does that affect what you should do? If you're a company, how does that affect what you should do? And if you're an individual, a citizen, a person, a consumer, then how does that affect what you should do? And the idea is that everybody is responsible going forward for trying to make the web a better web in different ways. And so when you look at governments, for example, you'll see you should protect things which are in the public interest, protect the internet, encourage innovation, encourage diversity. If your companies design the web so that when people meet in your social network, they are constructive. Design it so that they don't just meet people like themselves. Design it so that they learn to meet other people, they get to know people of different cultures. If you're citizens, there's 2 parts to it, really. Partly is actually, you should, online, you should behave nicely. You should be constructive. You should put in effort, like the people who make Wikipedia, and try to work towards truth. If don't be swept off into some undercurrents of hatred-fueled untruth. So it's partly about behavior as a human being on the web, but it's also, as you're an individual, you need to hold those companies accountable, and you need to hold those governments accountable. A lot of them, we hope, will end up signing, whether or not they sign, but particularly if they sign and join this contract, we need your help. So the contract, that's what the contract for the web is currently a set of principles. It will be a text. The idea is between now and next May that we open it up to lots of people to join and lots of people to discuss. We have working groups about all the various bits and pieces. And so I'm asking your help to be part of it. I'm asking your companies and your government agencies and yourself. You can join, and the whole idea is to fix those 2 huge problems we have, the people that are online and the people that are not online. And so quite easy, but you guys, I think we can do it together. So hashtag for the web. Thank you, everybody, for the web.
She's to start a chat.
Please welcome to the stage, from CNN, Laurie Segal.
Oh, wow. I think everyone who comes out here is going to say, wow. Hi, guys.
There's a bit of wow about it.
Yeah. This contract for the web, it's incredible to see you out here and putting this out here and asking for more. The idea that governments, companies, citizens will work towards a certain set of principles. I love the idealism, and I think it's an important time for that. So tell us, how do we hold tech companies, governments, how do we actually make sure this works? How do you hold people accountable?
Lots of different ways. I suppose if you're inside a tech company, we've seen recently, people inside tech companies have attitudes respected attitudes about what the company should do. So to a certain extent, you can make sure that the company you're doing from inside, you can make it do the right things. When you look at other companies, obviously from the outside, you can lobby. You can. There will be a phase of measurement. There will be a phase when we actually do look and see whether all the sides of this have actually been upheld. But also, I think to a certain extent, it's not just about enforcement. It's about a change of attitude. But just, for example, GDPR in Europe, it's just a regulation in Europe. But what I've seen is that all over the world, the whole conversation about privacy has changed because the conversation has changed by GDPR, and people, all the large companies, no matter which country they're in, are taking GDPR's attitude as their attitude. So I hope that effectively companies and governments will take the for the web contract for the web attitude as their attitude.
This is a big question, but we have a big audience, so why not? What do you think, as a leader of the web, what do you think is the single most important ethical issue when it comes to the future of technology and its increasingly complicated intersection with humanity?
I would have answered that question easily 10 years ago. I would have said, oh, well, keeping it free and open. The web shouldn't be controlled by anybody. But now, part of the contract for the web is, in a way, a bit of there's a coming of age here. There's a realizing that there are some simple issues we should fight for, like freedom, or free speech. But when you actually look at a lot of the issues in the contract, it's actually complicated. So if you want me to pick one and say, this is most important, that would mislead her. Everybody would rush off fighting for that, but then they would then realize the unintended consequences of pushing for anonymity and encryption. Actually, that's all very well. But when you push for anonymity, then what do you do with people who put hate speech online? Where do you draw the line? So it's like, I think there are 9 principles. I'm not going to pick and choose. But I don't want people out there to just pick one.
This idea of privacy is very interesting. I think we've seen in the last year a lot of things happen that make us question our right to privacy online. So I'm going to present 2 views to you and argue for one. I think I know which one you're going to argue for, but maybe we have reached this pivotal point that maybe we just need to re-envision our privacy because we've signed these social contracts when we logged on to this great service that you've created. Maybe at this point we should re-envision our privacy. Or privacy is a fundamental human right, and we must fight for it. So give me the argument.
For me, you guess which campaign I'm going to be in. Privacy is one of the fundamental rights, and we must fight for it. Not just because we're worried about pictures of ourselves being shown to the wrong people or becoming public, because it's all about being able to have to myself the things which I only share with myself, and most things I share with somebody or some people, but being able to actually share with whoever I want, anybody in your family, anybody I work with, people I meet, the power to be able to share anything with anything, to be able to do a deal if I want to with somebody to help me do my shopping, for example. So yeah, definitely I think privacy, a fundamental right.
Have you seen these tech companies, especially companies like Facebook and Twitter, when it comes to this delicate line between free speech and censorship and them trying to tackle hate speech, have you seen a change of attitude inside these companies? As the kind of person who goes in and has the off-the-record, behind-closed-doors meetings, have they shifted their mentality over the last couple of years?
I think there are a lot of cases, there are some cases, as I say, there are some things which are just simple issues and some which are complex ones, and the limits of free speech are a complex one. In general, I feel what we need to do about that as a community, sometimes as a local community, you might want to, in Lisbon, might want to have discussions about what do people in Lisbon feel are the limits of free speech. But then globally, we need global discussions. It's difficult because different people have different opinions. If you're building a huge software platform, or you're building a little software platform, which may become huge later, you need to think about what are the implications. But every line of code you write, has this got an implication for free speech? What happens if somebody drags this here and drops this here? Then, is that going, how is it going to affect people's rights? How is the system, when people take their attitudes about free speech, for example, that they were taught, they learned in kindergarten, what happens when they come to my platform? How does that apply? Will I need new concepts of free speech? Will I need new concepts of privacy on the platform?
Great. Well, we actually have a great group of supporters who have signed the contract, so I want to bring them out and have them explain why. So you guys come on out. Great. Give him a hand.
Conga line.
It's not a Beyonce concert, I promise. This is Web Summit, guys. Great. Michael, let's start with you. You are the COO of Anchor Free. You can explain a little bit about that. Having spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley, I know there are a lot of these dinner table conversations with folks talking about how do we fix things.
Yep.
How do you think this contract can actually help?
Yeah, so I'll introduce Anchor Free real quick. So we build technology to make the internet more private, more secure, more open. So we fight internet censorship. People can get our app directly, or we have an SDK that they use. And so we've distributed that out to about 700 million devices so far. But it's really important that we all kind of participate in protecting the internet. I was in New York years ago, and this is the reason why I joined Anchor Free. I was in New York when SOPA and PIPA were coming out, and some great leaders in the New York tech community, including Alexis Ohanian and Aaron Swartz and others, kind of rallied us all, and then eventually kind of everybody to fight those laws and protect the internet and allow it to kind of grow and prosper. What that told all of us at that point is actually that is all of our responsibility. I had just left a dating site. Everybody was building their own apps. Some of us had 2 people on our team. Some of us had thousands. And we understood that it was all of our responsibility, and we needed to come forward. And what Tim is doing is fantastic, because this is a call out now to everybody that this is individuals, companies, governments to come forward and decide how we want the internet to be.
I mean, it's kind of interesting, your specific standpoint at the kind of tech leader you are and the service you have. I'm assuming you have to make some complicated decisions as to who is allowed to use the service, who's not, and where is that fine line between free speech and censorship. So as a tech leader, how are you grappling with these increasingly murky waters?
Yeah. Well, I think, as our consumer apps are consumer VPNs, and obviously that's, you deal with a lot of gray area. And I think as humans, we're very bad at dealing with gray questions. We love black and white. We love kind of, overt answers to things. All of these things need each of us to come to the table. What we'll try to do with this contract for the web, because there's questions of, if you're a government, okay, you want stability and control, but is censorship of the internet okay? And then where in the middle, should we place, what we do? If you're a company, is it okay to say, okay, well that country says that we need to do it this way, so we're going to do it this way? Where do these, kind of gray areas? We need to sit down and kind of engage with each other and decide where they lie. So I'm looking forward to doing that through the process of the contract for the web.
Or you could just take his phone number and call him up anytime things get really complicated. Neelam, I know this is really personal to you. You are on the stage. I think you are the person who's never lived in the world without the web, I think. I'm sorry if anyone else.
Safe to say.
Everyone else seems young, too, but you're very young. You're a rising digital activist, so why is this contract personal to you?
Sure, thanks, Laurie. My name's Neelam, and I'm on stage today thanks to the New Now, who support rising passionate activists such as myself to make sure that our voices are included in decisions which impact our future. And I think to answer your question, Laurie, I haven't seen a world really in my adult life so far without the web and the power of digital. And I think that's so ingrained in the way that I live my life and in the way that I do activism. And I think I might have taken that for granted in the sense that I have access to education, I have access to economic opportunity, healthcare, and there are people all around the world, in particular girls and women, who don't have access to these things. But I think what's most important is this access to this sense of community, with which otherwise I wouldn't have been able to start up my own platform which brings social activists together. And I think it's super important. Somebody put it quite nicely to say it's the lottery of life, but it shouldn't be the lottery of life. And I think that's why the New Now stands for the new contract for the web.
Great. And yeah, we could clap for it. You guys clap. Jacqueline, you're a VP at Google, the president of Google.org. It's good to see a big tech company show up, come on stage, and kind of talk about some of these things, especially at this time. What was the thinking in having Google sign on?
Well, this is an incredible moment for the world. This 50-50 moment, it's a huge milestone, and it's a great opportunity for us to really double down and bring access to everyone, especially, as Neelam was saying, women and girls who are much less likely to have access. And we know with the vast scale of the web that brings huge benefits as well as challenges. And as Google, we really think the best way to deal with these challenges is to come together collectively and work collaboratively. So that's why we're here at the table. We're working alongside government, civic society leaders, other companies, academics, web users. We all need to come together. And that's why Google is supporting the Web Foundation and why we're also very supportive of this new contract. And we think everyone can really get behind these principles and really rally together to protect the free and open web.
It's an important time for Google, too. Just last week, you had employees all around the world walking out of the office and protesting for better conditions for women in the workplace. You know, this was an international story, and I personally had friends walking out who felt frustration. So you are a female leader at Google. What has to change?
Well, I participated in the walkouts, and I think it was a good moment for us to come together as a company. And I think what we heard as leaders from our women and from allies as well is that we need to do a better job of creating a really safe and inclusive workplace, and we're really committed to doing that.
What's your message to women out here who are...
Women! We need more women in tech. So proud of all the women who are already out there, and I heard the number of how many entrepreneurs we have in particular and women in technology, and we can do this together.
Great. Munir, you are the Minister for Digital in France. That's a fancy title. Explain that. And France is also the first country to sign the contract. So explain the thinking behind it.
Yes, tonight I'm very proud to announce that on behalf of President Emmanuel Macron and our whole government, France is the first country to sign this contract for the web. It all comes with everything we believe in. In Europe, we have a strong belief that there should only be an internet that serves the people and serves the planet. That technology should always serve the humans and not the contrary. And we are fighting for that. We are united. You are uniting for that. And today is the right time, because after 30 years, because after all the development and the transformation of the web, at this age of maturity comes the age of responsibility. And we believe that if we want to avoid the Wild West of the web, if we want to avoid a web where our mothers, fathers, and kids to come, and SMEs and startups should really build their own digital path, should really decide what they want for themselves on the web, we need to avoid the abuse. And when I talk about the abuse, we know them, we see them every day. Personal data that are abused every day, speech, online hate speech that becomes the norm, unfair business practices that are everywhere and that are completely hurtful to our SMEs. For all these reasons, we were very passionate to sign this contract. But this contract is only the beginning. So we need to work all together. And thank you again, Tim.
Thank you. I want to end with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim, I want to end with you, and I know we got to wrap. I had a moment a couple weeks ago at CNN in New York. We had an explosive device that was sent to our building. And I remember as we were sitting out there thinking, because a lot of the hate speech was there before, and there were actual threats that emerged offline, and I remember thinking, I feel like we've reached this point where a lot of these clicks and swipes are turning into police sirens. And it certainly felt like an important moment to look at. So because I got you here, because you created the World Wide Web, tell us all, do you think it's going to be okay? I don't need a hug. I'm okay. I'm all right, guys.
It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Why is it going to be okay?
It's going to be okay because these people are going to step back and they're going to put aside all the myths that they're currently taking as being just part of the physics of the way things work. Right? The physics is about an apple drops to a floor, the apples will keep dropping to the floor. People do not only have to be motivated, the systems that people use don't have to be free, they don't have to be, the ad-based funding model doesn't have to work in the same way. It doesn't have to create clickbait. It doesn't have to be the only reason that you get a programming job in order to distract your user from doing what they're trying to do. I think we're looking for a revolution. Yeah, the contract for the web is a bit revolutionary because it says it's about going back to values, and behind that, I think there's a bit of a part of the revolution is about people like you, people who are actually building the web, are taking things into their own hands and saying, I actually want to work on a project where I am acting as the user's agent. I'm going to write code which works for the user, which isn't trying to distract the user. I'm going to write code so that when the user uses their app, there at every point, I try to make the app doing what I would want it to do if I was the user. There's that concept of the technology working for the user, and if you're worried about, if people say there'll never be a funding model for it, just do it anyway. What we used to do in the early days, of before the dot-com bust, people used to just do it and worry about the funding model afterwards. We need a bit more of that. Because if enough people, if you generate value, if you serve the user, you are generating so much value, and it is value that your users won't be accustomed to. A pleasant experience reading your articles without being distracted, people won't be accustomed to. They may be shocked. They will realize that you've given them a lot of value, and somehow you and your users and the people you work with will get to a better place by throwing away the myths of the previous years. Thanks.
Tim Berners-Lee, thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Have a great night. Thanks.
That was fantastic. I've been asked, I gave a call out for Brazilians, and they made a huge roar, but I've been reliably informed if I call out the Portuguese, they'll make a bigger roar. Are there any Portuguese here tonight? Fantastic. Apple is the world's most valuable company. It's both created and redefined product after product, from the personal computer to the phone and beyond. Last week, Apple made some stunning environmental announcements. Apple is now setting a new bar for companies around the world. And so it's with huge excitement that I welcome Obama's former environmental czar and Apple's leader on all things sustainability and the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the wonderful Lisa Jackson.
Wow, it's an honor to be speaking alongside Sir Timothy John Berners-Lee. It's wonderful to be here and know Darren Aronofsky's coming next, and the Prime Minister and the Secretary General of the UN, and of course our wonderful host, Patty Cosgrave. I'm here because this moment is about inspiration, education, and real power. Frankly, I came here tonight to be inspired by you. Because this room is full of thinkers, but thinkers who are also doers, who are constantly challenging what is possible and changing the world around them in real time. And that's the same inspiration that led me to Apple 5 years ago. Our future, our collective future, demands that we ask tough questions and not stop until we find smart and compelling answers. And it's not an easy task. And I've actually had the honor of spending my career doing that from two very different, or seemingly different, perspectives. The first is that of a policymaker. As the head of the US Environmental Protection Agency under President Barack Obama, I saw every day firsthand how the policies we make and develop can push the needle from a future that's at risk to a future full of hope. I spent so many years serving in government, working to spur the changes our society needs to protect our environment. But perspective number two is a little bit different, eh? Now, in the role of a business executive, I see just how essential major companies are in driving the innovation that powers positive change. And I see how companies benefit from the certainty that comes from everyone working towards the same goal. Now, the air we breathe and the planet we leave to our children doesn't belong to any one party. It doesn't belong to any one ideology. It belongs to all of us. And governments, no matter which political party leads it, government should be our allies in our work. At Apple, we've supported and we continue to support the Paris Climate Agreement. And yes, like you, we've seen the urgency of climate action, evidenced in the recent IPCC report. And yes, not everyone agrees. And we're seeing rollbacks of environmental protections and safeguards in the US that were put into place just a few short years ago. Actions that were demonstrating real results for clean energy, for human health, and for climate. The underlying message behind this rollback strategy seems to be that protecting the environment is bad for business. Well, as head of environmental initiatives at Apple, I've had a front row seat to the tremendous impact that progressive environmental policy can have on our planet and on our profits. I'm here today with a very simple message to tell you all unequivocally, you leaders and dreamers and doers, that there is no conflict between a healthy planet and a healthy bottom line. It's a false choice, and one each one of us must reject. You don't have to take my word for it. I'm a bit of a preacher on this issue. Let's take a look at Apple's record. Over the last 2 years, we've issued $2.5 billion in green bonds. That's the largest amount ever from a US corporation. And we did it for a simple reason, to demonstrate how business can drive the reduction of global emissions. Today, nearly $2 billion of those funds are at work on big projects that are yielding big results. One of the most historic of those came in April when we announced that every one of our global facilities now run on 100% clean energy. That means, that's a good thing. That means every store, every one of our data centers, every corporate office, and every co-located facility around the world. It is an incredibly important accomplishment and one that we're proud of. We've also made major progress toward a longer running and actually more challenging goal, powering our global supply chain on clean energy. Today, 23 of our global suppliers of all sizes have joined us in this pledge. But we know clean energy isn't easy to implement everywhere. That's why this summer, we launched a $300 million clean energy fund in China. It's to keep the momentum going. It's a first-of-its-kind program to help businesses tap into renewable energy, but especially in places where finding those energy sources might be tricky. We hope it's a model that will be replicated around the world. Now, we're also constantly looking for ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, from manufacturing even down to reimagining the materials we use. Aluminum has been made the same way in a century-old process. But this past year, we partnered with Alcoa Corporation, Rio Tinto Aluminum, and the governments of Canada and Quebec to bring a revolutionary new method of direct, emissions-free aluminum smelting to commercial use. It's a little geeky, but stay with me. Think about what that means. One of the most essential industrial processes in the world, releasing oxygen instead of CO2. We're also working towards a day where we don't need to extract anything from the earth in order to make our products. Just last week, we launched our latest generation MacBook Air, which is made with 100% recycled aluminum in the enclosure. We have recycling robots who help to take apart our products. And our second robot, the name is Daisy. Daisy is officially up and running now in the Netherlands. Each Daisy model can take apart 200 iPhones in an hour and reclaim the precious materials so we can reuse that material to make new products. And to keep our Daisy robots busy, we have two, one in the Netherlands and one in the United States. We launched Apple Give Back this year, a program to make it easy for our customers to return their old devices to any Apple store or online so that they can be reused and recycled. So these are just a few of the ways that we're investing in transforming and valuable innovation. Now, we also know that the future of ingenuity rests on the foundation of education that we build today. So educating this next generation has to be a priority. We've partnered with the Malala Fund to bring safe, quality schooling to 100,000 girls around the world as a start. Why? Because education is a fundamental human right. We can't find the answers we need without educating people and girls and women. We can't find the answers we need without women involved, period. We've launched Everyone Can Code, and one of my favorites, Everyone Can Create, to bring vital skills to learners of all ages, because the language of coding opens doors and opportunities now and in the future for society. And we're making sure these new programs are accessible to everyone, including those with disabilities or with limited access to technology, because we believe that unless everyone can contribute, the conversation isn't over and our work's simply not done. Now, something else happened as we were focused on protecting our planet and investing in future generations. And it goes back to the beginning, to that false choice I mentioned. Over the last decade, Apple became the most valuable company in the world. I don't say that to brag, really. I say it because it reinforces a point that has guided my time at Apple, but also guided my entire professional career, and I hope it will help to guide yours. The last half-century of environmental protection and social responsibility in the US and around the world is built on one simple belief. It's profound and it's incredibly powerful. With the right dedication, with your innovation, we can protect the planet and invest in our future, all while running a successful business. We can do well by doing good. These efforts are a complement to and a major component of our strategic success. And we want to help our peers in business to do the same. Because at Apple, we're big believers in the idea that there's no problem too big or too complex to solve through creativity, collaboration, and innovation. And that pessimism and doomsaying can only stand in the way of possibility and opportunity. From the standpoint of any business, from the standpoint of any person, from my standpoint as a mother whose sons will inherit the world we leave them, we have to change this trajectory. A few weeks ago, our CEO, Tim Cook, spoke in Brussels and asked a question that guides us every day at Apple. What kind of world do we want to live in? Every decision we make starts and ends with that simple but powerful thought, because our answer will be the foundation of our shared future. I'm fiercely proud to be part of a company whose mission is to create a better world, and that mission informs what it does. I'm invigorated by this crowd, by the energy here tonight, because I know that some of the most talented and brilliant minds of our generation are focused right here, now, and over the next 2 days in improving life for the next generation ahead. And I'm really confident that you will pass on a brighter and more beautiful world to all of our daughters and sons. Thank you.
Hey guys. So, many of the greatest artists, performers, inventors, scientists, and entrepreneurs of our time and times past have been deeply complex and tormented characters. More than any other movie maker, Darren Aronofsky has captured that character. The Wrestler and Black Swan are two truly extraordinary movies amongst the many powerful movies Darren has made. Let's watch this clip.
There are patterns everywhere in nature.
I want to make a paradise.
It's a reason to get up in the morning.
I'm an old, broken-down piece of meat, and I'm alone.
It's going to be amazing.
Remember, I chose you for a reason. I trust you. Take. Show me.
You fly too high, you'll get burned.
There will be no order, only chaos.
One of Darren's current passions is pioneering immersive virtual reality. To explain how tech is changing storytelling, please welcome to the stage in conversation with senior writer at Wired, Lauren Good, the ever-talented Darren Aronofsky.
Thank you for being here.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we heard it was going to be a fireside chat, and this feels more like a basketball game, but it's fantastic to be here. So Patty alluded to this briefly, but one of your more recent projects is in virtual reality. And in fact, it got a lot of attention at Sundance earlier this year. Why did you decide to pursue a project in VR?
Well, there was a young filmmaker behind it, a woman named Eliza McNitt. She's 26 years old, extremely passionate, trying to combine science with storytelling, which is something that everyone at my company has been trying to do. My company is called Protozoa. I come from a science background, so whenever science can be part of filmmaking, it's really interesting to me. And what Eliza was doing was taking viewers in virtual reality to impossible location in the cosmos. So she created a virtual reality that allows you to experience two black holes colliding, being inside of a black hole, and explores the different sounds of space. And it was something I hadn't seen before, and a really good use of the medium because it definitely transforms where you are. When Robert Redford did it at Sundance, he fell over, which everyone was concerned about, but I was excited because it just was a good headline, and it gives you a true emotional experience of experiencing the cosmos.
I mean, I think that's one of the benefits of VR for people who maybe haven't experienced it yet, is that it really does put you into that environment and can certainly trigger an emotional response, but there's still that barrier, right, of having to get someone to wear something on their face in order to experience that.
But it's a pretty convincing world. I mean, it's very different than storytelling and filmmaking. And I think if you talk to the latest thinkers in virtual reality, there's a clear line. For a long time, people were talking about how virtual reality was going to replace film. And it may replace it in how people decide to spend their time and their leisure time, but it's two different art forms. And most people who are working in virtual reality and most filmmakers are aware of that trying to blend them is really not working. You know, when you see video games, I think as a video game player myself, and you get to those cut scenes that sort of where they basically put a movie into the middle of a video game, they're kind of cool for a little bit, but then they get pretty tedious. And I think the most successful creators are people who are really establishing that they're two different environments, two different worlds. Storytelling is I wouldn't say it's a passive experience, but it's a very different experience than being in a experience that you're controlling and guiding where it's going to go.
Right, and that kind of follows the history of media in general, right? Television wasn't just radio with pictures, and web video is not just TV chopped up. I mean,
it is kind of web video is kind of. But,
people in this room should work on that. But I mean, in a lot of ways, you're expressing that this is an entirely new medium, and so things should be designed and created as such.
Yeah, I remember when I was in film school in the early 90s, and Jaron Lanier was out there talking about the data glove, is that what they call it? And all that stuff. We were all thinking about it and terrified, but I think it's become clear it's when you're watching a movie, you're not passive, right? It's truly an act in empathy. That's the great part of filmmaking, is you can sit there and you can, through close-up, enter the subjective experience of a character who takes you on a journey and on a trip where you basically experience what that character is going through, your own humanity. In virtual reality, there's less character involved. You can sort of stumble on some of that stuff, but it's more about just feeling, it's very experiential, and you're much more yourself. You're not sort of transformed, I feel, into another person's shoes.
Do you plan to produce more projects in VR?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately we're storytellers, and so we're interested in communicating stories in any way you can, and sometimes it's narrative, sometimes it's documentary, like we did with One Strange Rock. We're just trying to put really good content out there with really good creators.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, what would you say has been the most influential technology on what you do as a filmmaker?
Wow. I mean, it's funny because when I did my first film, Pi, the first time a film was downloaded on the internet was Pi in 2000. And I remember when they came to us and said, oh, we want to download, I had no idea really what they were talking about, but it's funny because basically most people are going to experience film purely through a streaming service at this point. It also, Pi was the first time a title sequence had been done digitally. Yet there's no visual effects in the entire movie. And then in a movie like Mother, which isn't really a visual effects film, there's probably 1,400 visual effects in that film that are really subtle things to really big things. But I think that's the use of computers to help a filmmaker shape exactly what he or she wants to make and create has definitely been the biggest breakthrough. I think when I started filmmaking or like watching movies in the 70s and 80s, there were 2 or 3 of the kind of Gandalfs out there, Spielberg and George Lucas, who had this thing called ILM, and only they really could use computers to do stuff. And now it's become everyone, and every movie basically can do anything they want with the camera, to creating a world like Avatar, to sort of subtle effects like we did in Mother.
Or like Noah, I mean, where you CGI
Noah was a big
animals.
Exactly, and basically a film like Noah would have never been possible when I first thought of it 20 years earlier. It only just becomes possible because of computers. So I think it's unlocked the possibility of what you can do and what type of stories you can tell.
Is there a point for you at which you think technology's influence on storytelling is too much? It goes to the dark side?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of filmmakers have lost control of that. I think films have become visual effects extravaganzas, and now you have these huge teams that are creating shots for movies, these big, we won't say exact titles, but you'll get filmmakers that aren't really interested in that part of the filmmaking, and they're really there just to work with the actors, and then you have huge teams creating these incredible landscapes. But then you have filmmakers like James Cameron, who's in complete control of everything and overlooking all of it and creating a singular vision where every single shot is chosen, if it's in virtual reality, if it's in a virtual setting or if it's in a real setting.
I had the chance to work on a story earlier this year about a group of filmmakers who had basically taken thousands of scripts, put them through TensorFlow, Google's machine learning system, and spit out a script for them, totally written by an AI. And then it was with Thomas Middleditch.
How did that work out?
The script's not so great. If you watch this video, you can find it. Thomas Middleditch from HBO Silicon Valley was a part of it. He's done this a few times now. But the reality, and another point too, they were doing face swapping in the videos, which is now a very real technology. So, at what point do you do you think that AI fundamentally changes what you do as a storyteller, as a writer, and as a director?
Well, it's a terrifying thought, but I don't know, when jokes and humor and stories start to be able to be reproduced where you can't tell the difference between them and the human counterparts is a strange moment. I guess there was a big piece of art that sold at auction. Did you read about that? That was based on some code and it sold for a few $100,000 and it was created by an AI. I don't know, storytelling is a very tricky thing, and I'm going to be a bit of a Luddite right now and put my faith in the constant invention of individuals to do something that a computer won't. But I know there was a documentary on the computer that beat the Go player, and the thing that was most interesting about that for me was, besides the fact that it beat a human for the first time, which everyone thought was impossible, was that how the computer played actually ends up affecting how humans play after that game happened. So the computer actually are not just beating us, but they're actually teaching us ways of approaching it. So I imagine that you can work with an AI to feel different solutions. It happens in digital editing. A film like Requiem for a Dream, which was one of the first films to, work with an Avid and work with digital editing machines, or at least for me it was. We were able to do incredibly complicated editing sequences that if we were working traditionally, the human hours of cutting something up like that would have taken forever. So we've got many more ways of looking at material, which is something I think has changed the way filmmaking is done as well because of technology.
Absolutely, and you're somebody who likes to shoot a lot and edit and spend your time really editing. I read that one of your films took, I think, more than a year in post.
Mother took about 50 weeks.
50 weeks, and so we might not be that far off from an AI actually picking your selects for you and expediting that process.
That's a tricky thing because picking selects is all about reading emotion and feeling emotion. And it's interesting, there's that ancient Eisenstein test where they took a woman's face that was neutral and they stick a baby crying and then they cut it with a lion roaring, and it's the context that tells you what the woman is feeling. So I think it's a very hard thing, for an AI to actually understand with context or even without context what a human being is feeling. So I think that when you get into the face swapping, it's all about the truth of emotion and really reducing things to what makes us human, what makes us people. So it may be the last thing we hold on to that keeps us away from AI.
Is that sense of human emotion, that instinctual drive that you have when you're making your films?
Yeah, I think that's what you're always looking for, is you're trying to create truthful characters that have honest emotions, that have strong emotions, because once again, watching a movie, when you look at a close-up of a movie star, it's the only place in the world where you are transported, where you're not self-conscious of yourself. Because even in this conversation between me and you and these thousands of people, I'm trying to focus on to the kind of thoughts that I'm having, and also not to look at you too much because it'll get awkward and make us both feel uncomfortable.
Well, I'm actually a robot, so you don't have to worry
There's no
about
feedback.
that.
But I think when you watch a movie, you're in a dark room staring at someone and you don't actually have to think about yourself. You're able to fully put your focus and concentration into the person on the screen, and that allows you to sort of be connected through your empathy to that person and go on this journey with that person and understand their issues and their problems and their situation. And that's the beauty of storytelling and filmmaking, is that you can watch, you know, a movie from anywhere in the world, and if it's well told with honest emotion, everyone in the world, everyone in this room will understand it and take away a similar thing.
But it's not just the production of film that's being impacted by technology, it's also the distribution and how people are watching things. I mean, now online streaming services have so much data about how people are watching things, what they're enjoying, what they're clicking on, whether even eye tracking, where their eyes are going in an interface as they're scrolling through movies. I mean, do you ever think about how having that amount of data, even at your fingertips, could impact what you're thinking about when you think about I mean, I don't get the sense you're a person who really thinks about, like, how am I going to please an audience, but do you think about that?
I don't ever think you can fully predict the future. I mean, maybe the popularity of an actor or the popularity of a location can allow, but I think what's exciting about art and about film is that it ultimately isn't a widget, and the thing that makes something different is sometimes what makes it special. When I was putting together Black Swan, everyone in all of Hollywood and all financial places turned it down. Everyone said no, because the main point was horror fans don't like ballet, and ballet fans don't like horror. So we had to go and we had to beg and scream, and even when we finished the film and we had a finished product and we were starting to show it to people, we really had no idea what it was going to become and how big it was going to get. And even 2 weeks into the release, no one really understood what the movie was. So, you know, I don't know if an AI could have helped with that to figure out, oh, you have Natalie Portman and Vincent Cassel, and do some type of formula and realize that it's actually going to work for people. Maybe, I don't know how sophisticated these things will get, but a lot of it was just unexpected, and like the idea, you know, the Black Swan idea of something out of the ordinary. Black Swan itself was a Black Swan event.
I think we're almost out of time, but I did want to ask you one more question about your environmental work. So you're a board member of the Sierra Club, and a lot of at least a couple of your films have focused on the environment and Earth in some way. There are a lot of people here who are involved in, you know, helping and changing the environment. What's the one thing that you would ask the people in this room to consider with regards to the environment?
It's a good question. I do think it's the paramount issue of our time. All other issues, you know, sort of pale in comparison when you don't have a home to live in. And people have always asked me, it's this overwhelming feeling of what can I do, and suddenly a lot of pessimism shows up, but I'm an incredible optimist in that I've seen amazing things happen and change really quickly. And I do believe in our future. And when people ask me, what am I going to do? You know, do I unplug certain things? It comes down to one thing. We really have to rely on governments to change and to help us move into this new future. And so, if I have one message on the eve of the election, it's vote for people who believe in science. That's all you can do. Vote for people who believe in science. Just as a final thing, it's funny because the same people who really believe in Twitter and the power of that you can write something on your phone and communicate to millions of people instantly are the same people who don't believe that humans are the cause of climate change. And it's the same scientists are telling that both things are true. So you can't really cherry pick science. You have to sort of accept it all or accept none of it.
It sounds like you're saying you can't really cherry pick responsibility.
Exactly.
Personal responsibility. Darren, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure
Nice
chatting.
to be here. Good luck.
So for our final speaker, before we officially open Web Summit, we're going to try something that we tried about 2 years ago. So I'm just going to ask if we could kill the house lights. Next up, we have the effective CEO of the United Nations, the Secretary General of the United Nations, an organization established after all the death and destruction of World War II to try and keep our world together. It was a light, a beacon of hope. And I would love everybody to switch on the torches on their phone to welcome the UN Secretary General on stage in a moment. So keep all your torches. Let's get everybody's torches up in the air. Lots and lots of torches. We can do better over here. Come on over here. It's the fancy politicians over there. Come on, guys. Get those torches out. This is fantastic. And then we're just going to give a huge cheer. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres.
Can't imagine how excited I am as an engineer to be able to address this wonderful crowd on cutting-edge technologies. But as Secretary General of the United Nations, my concern is to make sure the UN is able to support cutting-edge technologies to maximize their positive impacts on people and on the planet, and at the same time to limit the risks of their misuse. And the most fascinating thing about cutting-edge technologies is the speed. They move at a warp speed. 90% of the data that exists today in the world was created in the 2 last years. And to storage 1 megabyte of data, the cost would be in the 60s, something like $1 million. The cost is now less than 2 cents. Things are moving really very quickly. Technologies like blockchain or gene testing are now common technologies. And to the Internet of Things that is moving so exponentially, growing so exponentially, we are now adding the Internet of Bodies, with the web connecting medical implants. This is something that is now moving from experimentation to the mainstream. And artificial intelligence is everywhere, helping to buy and sell shares, helping police surveillance, and even helping people to choose their soulmates. I have to say I'm a little bit skeptical about this last possibility, and I'm very happy I have chosen my soulmate by traditional methodologies. But what is true is that all this is creating enormous benefits for people and for the planet. It helps us cure diseases, fight hunger, and it boosts economic and growth and development all over the world. At the same time, the use of these technologies allows us to be much more effective in addressing the problems of today's world. We have a globalization that has some imbalances and a lot of inequality. And that is why the UN has a blueprint, the Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, aiming exactly at creating a fair globalization, aiming of better conditions, not leaving anyone behind. Now, those Sustainable Development Goals, from education to health, from rescuing the oceans to climate action, it would be absolutely impossible to achieve them without, I would say, propping the world with the fantastic speed of the cutting-edge technologies that can help us achieve our objectives. What is also true is that we are in the UN ourselves using those technologies. UNICEF is now being able to map the connections between schools in remote areas. WFP is able to address the problems of the payments, tracking payments to recipients through blockchain. And even the UN High Commissioner for Refugees is able to use these technologies in creating the conditions for refugees with identification by biotechnologies to be better supported and to be better protected. Now, all these are fantastic things, but there are also challenges and there are also risks. And I'd like to mention very quickly 3 challenges. First, the social impact of the fourth industrial revolution. In the next few decades, we will see an enormous amount of jobs created and an enormous amount of old jobs destroyed. It's difficult to know which number will be bigger, but those jobs will be very different. And so we will face huge unemployment. You will face disruption in societies with impact in the social cohesion of those societies. And it is clear that we are not prepared for that, and we are not preparing fast enough for that. It is obvious that the relationship between work, leisure, and other occupations will change dramatically. We will need a massive investment in education, but a different sort of education. What matters now is not to learn things, is to learn how to learn things. And we will recognize that many will acquire the skills to allow them to have new professions, but some will be left behind. We will force the need for a new generation of safety nets to allow for people to survive and to have a new meaning for their own lives. This is an area of great concern that needs to mobilize government, civil society, everybody, and we are not doing enough to prepare for this challenge. Second, related to the internet itself. The internet is now linking, as it was said, half of the world population. It has given voice to many people marginalized by history. But the truth is that the internet is also conveying hate speech. It is used to violate privacy of people. And in some situations, you have governments and other institutions that use it to oppress, for censorship, and to control. Now, it is clear for me that it was not the web that has created populism, that has created tribalism, that has created polarization of societies. These have very deep root causes, and you can't blame the web for that. But it's true the web is amplifying those problems, and we need to mobilize government, civil society, academia, scientists in order to be able to avoid the digital manipulation of elections, for instance, and to create some filters that are able to block hate speech to move and to be a factor of the instability of societies. And the third concern I would like to raise is related to the question of human agency, the problems of control, and artificial intelligence is at the center of these concerns. Today, we recognize that many things that were done by people are now done by machines. And let's be clear, in many circumstances, they are better done by machines. Even in sophisticated areas like medical diagnosis or in police surveillance. And what is important is not to forget that it also can happen in weapons that will have, by their own, the possibility to kill. And this is a great concern for me, the impact of technology on warfare and the difficulties created to preserve peace and security in the world. The weaponization of artificial intelligence is a serious danger. And the prospect of machines that have the capacity by themselves to select and destroy targets is creating enormous difficulties, or will create enormous difficulties to avoid the escalation in conflict and to guarantee that international humanitarian law and human rights law are respected in the battlefields. And for me, there is a message that is very clear. Machines that have the power and the discretion to take human lives are politically unacceptable, are morally repugnant, and should be banned by international law. Now, when we look at all these problems, we understand that we have the need to be able to address them. Typical traditional forms of regulation necessarily do not apply. It is true that in some areas we need to use international law, but they are limited. In the majority of circumstances, technology moves so fast that the time to gather people for a preparation of a convention, to discuss it, to approve it, to ratify and to implement it, when it comes, everything is already very different. And so what we need is to create platforms, like the one that was mentioned in the contract. And I want the UN to be a platform where governments, the academia, scientists, companies, civil society can come together and can find ways to discuss and to agree on protocols, on codes of conduct, on other mechanisms that allow for the cyberspace, that allow for the digital technologies, that allow for the web, that allows for artificial intelligence to be essentially a force for good. Thank you very much.
So we're getting very close to opening this year's Web Summit. I'm now going to call on the Prime Minister of Portugal to join me on stage. Please welcome Prime Minister Antonio Costa. Once again, on behalf of the Web Summit team and all of our staff, I'd just like to say a huge thank you for all of your hospitality. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you, Paddy. Boa noite. Good evening. Hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to welcome you for this year's edition of Web Summit. Portugal likes to be an open country who receive people come from all over the world. We start 600 years. Portugal is a country open to the world that values freedom and believes in innovation as an engine of progress. Connecting people from all over the world is in our DNA. We started 600 years ago, connecting Europe to Africa, to Asia, to America. Next year, we celebrate 500 years since the first circumnavigation of the globe by Fernão de Magalhães. Since then, we have always been a meeting point between peoples and cultures, a hub for migration and a driver of global trade. We have learned also from the darkest sides of our history. And from those days, we learned to love our freedom and the freedom of all the human beings equally. We learned to respect each one's beliefs, ways of life, sexual orientation, and gender equality. We learned that only freedom allows for creativity, technological innovation, and entrepreneurship. Living by the ocean gives us an infinite curiosity. Scientific knowledge allowed us to transform it into the capacity to innovate, thus opening up the sea routes of the first globalization. By connecting people, cultures, and goods, we open a new era of global progress, building on the knowledge acquired in the fields of botany, biology, and medicine. From history, we have learned that walls are prisons and that bridges are open doors to progress. For all these reasons, we are very pleased to be welcoming Web Summit for the next 10 years here in Lisbon. Because humanity faces new global challenges that mobilize us all and that we can only overcome through knowledge and innovation. Addressing hunger, healthcare, climate change, reinventing the work in Industry 4.0, the protection of freedom in the digital space, reducing inequalities, allowing everyone access to knowledge, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Portugal is very pleased to welcome you, not only here at the Web Summit, but also to live here in Portugal, to work in Portugal, or invest in Portugal. We have highly skilled talent, world-class universities, high-speed internet everywhere, and a vibrant startup ecosystem. That is why Portugal is the best meeting point to create our future together. Às empresas portuguesas, quero aqui desejar que durante esta semana encontrem parceiros, novos mercados, mais capital, novos recursos humanos. Vocês são os nossos embaixadores na Web Summit. Tenham aqui uma grande semana e façam aqui um excelente trabalho. Well, to all Web Summiters, enjoy this week in Lisbon. Be free, be creative, connect. Welcome to Portugal, welcome to Web Summit.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I would now like to call on the Mayor of this great city. Please welcome the Mayor of Lisbon, Fernando Medina.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lisbon. Welcome. I'm the proud mayor of this amazing city, and my desire on these days is that you have the opportunity to really know us. For the ones that are here for the first time, you are going to know one of the ancient cities in Europe and in the world. You are going to see that this place has been, for centuries, the places where people try to build their lives, where they put their hopes, where they build their future. You're going to find about history, you're going to find about culture, you are going to find about the proud people that welcomes you all. But you are going also to find the modern part of Europe, the modern part on technology, the modern part on universities, on companies, on entrepreneurs. But most of all, you are going to find one of scarce resources in our days: openness, tolerance, the wishing of you well, the wishing of welcoming you all here to Lisbon. We are very proud about our cities. We are very proud about our values. And this
that's why we are very proud of having this city as the home for Web Summit for the next 10 years. Because what we tried to point with this decision, that we want to make Lisbon the capital for innovation, the capital for entrepreneurs, but mainly the capital of tolerance, the capital of dialogue, the capital where places talk to each other, no discriminations, where everyone is welcome here to Lisbon. Patty, normally I give you a small gift in the name of the city. This year I could not miss. I hope that someone can bring the gift.
I could help.
Oh, it's here. Thank you. The Prime Minister just spoke about this. This is a guy that walked to Lisbon 500 years ago. At that time, Lisbon was the center of the world, with innovation, with science, with technology, with the courage of discovering new worlds. I have to present you Fernando Magellan.
Thank you.
The world that Magellan helped us discover and build is the world somehow that you, the new generations of the brightest people, entrepreneur, courageous, are discovering. Opening new routes, opening new frontiers, giving new worlds to the world. 500 years after, Lisbon becomes now the capital of the world because of you. Thank you very much. Have a great Web Summit. Enjoy Lisbon.
So just before we press the button, I would like to welcome up the incredible Portuguese startup community. There's so many fantastic entrepreneurs working behind the scenes and helping us and building incredible companies. Please, guys, if you might come up on the stage. Whilst that's happening, let's also welcome to Web Summit the largest traditional Portuguese percussion orchestra led by Rui Jr. Please welcome Toca Rafor.
Viva, bem, bem.
Thanks, guys.
Viva, bem,
Thanks a million.
bem.
Então,
Bem, bem.
Hey.
Olá, viva, tudo bem? Obrigado, nós. Tudo bem.
Então, viva. Olá.
Okay, it's time, Prime Minister and Mayor. Let's start the countdown to this year's Web Summit.
Viva. Bem.
See you all tomorrow morning, 7:30 a.m., doors open. Thank you so much. Good night. Woo!